it's really, really weird to me to see the vast amount of disinformation that is coming out from basically every like mouthpiece that the state of Israel has. And it's kind of shocking, right? Like, I wanted to pull this up. This is from the official State of Israel Twitter account. So, somewhat the mouthpiece of the state, one could say. And it says, how multiculturalism went wrong? Brussels Parliament invited a Muslim preacher who chose to recite parts of Surah which explicitly calls for the killing and taking captive of Jews. And it quote tweeted Israel's ambassador to Belgium and Luxembourg, tweeting out, absolutely horrified to discover that in Brussels Parliament, an invited Muslim preacher chose to recite parts of Surah al-Ahzab, a surah about a battle between Muslims and Jews. This is a surah that explicitly, verse 26, calls for the killing and taking captive of Jews. In these words, he could have chosen anything else, a frightening symbolic message to anyone who knows the Quran, straight from the Parliament podium. In Brussels Parliament, a city with 18,000 Jews who are already experiencing increased anti-Semitism and fear. I mean, let's take a look here. So, the post that she's sharing says, he is saying, and he brought down those from the people of the book who supported the enemy alliance from their own strongholds and cast horror into their hearts. You believers killed some and took others captive. Right? And here he is. Interesting. Now, I can't understand any of that. So, I can buy that, like, man, it is kind of weird that you'd invite, like, a preacher to speak and then they call for, like, ethnic cleansing in your country. That seems kind of out of left field. That seems kind of weird, but, I can't understand what he's saying, so I guess I just have to take that at face value, or I could just look down here at all of the people who are just straight up saying, hey, this is not what the man is saying. That's not what was translated there is not what he's saying. That's pretty crazy. And I don't have to point out, it's not too hard for me to lift a finger and point out that it's really rich for the Israeli State Department to be like, how dare this preacher in a small European country talk about this particular phrase when being asked to speak. After all, he's calling for ethnic cleansing, clearly. And you say this while completely ignoring the fact that the Israeli Prime Minister and, like, other officials with the Israeli government have been talking about Amalek and the call to action of Amalek over and over for months now. We've talked about this before on stream, but they've literally invoked the story of what God told the Israelites to do to those of Amalek, which is kill them, all of them, men, women, children, donkeys, etc. Yeah, honestly, I mean, it kind of goes to like one of the rules of propaganda, which is that you just lie as big as you can, and the enormity of the lie will have those who accept it, you know, hook, line, and sinker, essentially. Yeah. Here's a link to the tweet. Oh yeah, inverted RD. It's definitely like on par. I mean, honestly, the IDF's and Israel's propaganda is so much more sophisticated than what the United States' was in like 2001, especially especially in the aftermath. Like that it this is wild coordination. I don't know. Also, what do you mean? You mean Israel tells lies to cover up potential war crimes? That's crazy, dog. Israel would never do that. Oh, well, except remember that rocket. Remember that time at the beginning of the Israeli invasion of the Gaza Strip when the state of Israel got really, really upset and defensive at the idea that they would ever drop a bomb on a hospital? Do you guys remember that? And then there was a bomb dropped on a hospital, and like hundreds of people were wounded. And um, they said, "Oh, it wasn't an Israeli rocket. It was a Hamas rocket or some other rocket that happened to be in the neighborhood." And well, it turns out that they might not have been 100% correct about that. Here is a group called Forensic Architecture putting out their latest findings on the Al Ali hospital blast. They recreated the trajectory of all of the rockets involved. So let's just take a quick look at this. Okay. So that's very interesting. But what does it tell us here? Well, let's see what they have to say. Using 3D trajectory analysis, we dispute the Israeli military's claim that the hospital was struck by a misfiring Palestinian rocket from a salvo of 17, with most of the damage caused by unspent rocket propellant. Our analysis shows that all 17 rockets traveled 1.8 to 2 kilometers at 500 to 630 meters per second and stopped flaring at a 1 kilometer altitude, around 4 kilometers west of Al Hali. According to an aerospace expert, these figures indicate that all rockets would have finished burning their propellant while still in mid-flight. These recent findings follow our previous analysis, which debunked claims made by an Israeli spokesperson about two videos he alleged showed the rocket responsible for the hospital blast. Interesting. The devastating explosion at Al Ali Hospital has come to epitomize the information war surrounding Israel's post-October 7th invasion of Gaza. Using our 3D model, we will continue to track the dynamic airspace over Gaza to challenge key pieces of Israeli disinformation. Yeah. So, yeah. Yes, spicy diarrhea. This is like that first hospital bombing that the Israeli government was aghast and agog that they would ever be accused of even looking at a hospital. And yeah, turns out nope, that was probably them. Yeah. The rockets, one of the rockets that they said did it, they don't really seem like they could have done it. So, interesting stuff for sure. What's this? Ah, good. Earlier today, Prime Minister of Israel. Israel does not recognize the legitimacy of the proceedings of the International Court in The Hague regarding the legality of the occupation, which are an effort designed to infringe on Israel's right to defend itself against existential threats. The proceedings at The Hague are part of the Palestinian attempt to dictate the results of the diplomatic settlement without negotiations. We will continue to reject this. The government and Knesset are united in rejecting this unacceptable course of action. Ah, yes, the nefarious international cabal of Palestinians, really puppeteering the UN, these international forces. What an interesting message for Hitler didn't really want to do the Holocaust, Netanyahu. I can't believe that someone who does Holocaust denial would reject the Hague. My God. In case you guys don't know what I'm talking about, Benjamin Netanyahu legitimately believes that essentially Hitler was coerced into doing the Holocaust by Muslim leaders in the Middle East. So, yeah, that's insane. And Holocaust denial, just to really reiterate in case you didn't pick that up. Yeah, and this is him basically saying that regardless of what the international bodies decide, they're not going to really listen. So it wouldn't surprise me that even if the UN called for a diplomatic ceasefire, wouldn't surprise me if Israel said no. But I do think that it's meaningful for rescinding U.S. support in other ways as well. All right. Now we have Ryan Grimm here confirming that a doctor in the Gaza Strip has been apparently abducted. One of the last remaining functional hospitals in the Gaza Strip is Nasser Hospital. And there have been a series of stories that I've wanted to cover around this hospital, but just for one reason or another, we haven't gotten to the last several days. Basically, Israeli IDF forces have been just shooting people who come out of Nasser Hospital. It's been wild. There have been like negotiations. Now they're taking doctors hostage. It's very, very weird. But this is apparently confirmed. Dr. Khalid al-Ser, who took a lead role in trying to inform Western press of the consequences of Israel's attack on Nasser Hospital, has been abducted. Now, you will notice that this is continuing a pattern of the IDF seemingly singling out prominent figures in the media or people within the Palestinian diaspora who talk to the media. This has been an ongoing trend. There's not like, I would say there's not like documented, like we have a paper trail kind of evidence, but mostly like outside observers are kind of picking up what the IDF is putting down in their explosions, How can they claim this isn't the genocide? I genuinely have no idea. But here's the press release about this abduction. Team of international doctors demand that Khalid al-Ser be released from Israeli military custody. It's been 34 hours since we heard from our dear colleague, Dr. Khalid al-Ser, at Nasser Medical Complex in Gaza. Even as the Israeli military invaded Nasser Hospital, Khalid continued sending us updates from the ICU. Khalid's family has now heard concerning reports from the Israeli military abducted Khalid and 8 other doctors. So it's not just this one doctor. The IDF abducted like 9 doctors, like an entire wing of the hospital. This is the last video we have of Khalid at the hospital, in which he discusses an ICU patient who died because of a lack of electricity. For almost a month, we've been consulting on cases with Khalid as he performed complex surgeries far outside his specialty, with virtually no medical supplies and with bullets ricocheting off the operating theater. He has risked his life and limb to save his patients. We are deeply concerned that the Israeli military has abducted and unlawfully detained Khalid al-Ser. We demand his immediate release. During the Israeli siege of the Nasser medical complex, an international team of doctors had coached Khalid through numerous complex cases via WhatsApp. That man's a legend, says Tanya Haj Hassan, a pediatric ICU doctor. After the Israeli military destroyed a warehouse of medical supplies and bombed one of the wards, killing one patient and injuring 6 others, many of the staff left the hospital, but Khalid decided to stay. Quote, "I will stay in the hospital because we have patients who need care," unquote, he says in one voice note. Rebecca Inglis, a critical care doctor based in the UK who's been advising Khalid's cases and has been in regular touch with him, says Israel is showing utter disregard for the specific protections afforded to healthcare workers during these times of conflict, in what appear to be repeated egregious breaches of international human law. Yeah. So, basically, 9 doctors just vanished, black-bagged off the face of the earth. Wild stuff. And, like, this is stupid bullshit we can talk about later. But the thing that gets me is that we know that atrocities and war crimes are taking place, not just because, like, we can infer them, right? It's not just because of, like, circumstantial evidence that we're able to, like, kind of get a general idea of what's happening. But the thing is, the IDF doesn't care if the world sees. The IDF doesn't care if their soldiers are posting pictures of them, like, torturing Palestinians. It's bizarre, and this just keeps happening. Here's Ryan Grimm again, sharing this post from IDF social media. Jenin, by the way, is a refugee camp. So, Israeli soldiers celebrating his birthday beside a kidnapped Palestinian from the city. The footage was shared a few days ago. They just keep doing this. Like, the level of dehumanization, where, like, they don't think this person's a person. The level of dehumanization is, I think, like, one of the things beyond all others that, like, assures me that the actual fully documented atrocities that the IDF is doing are genocidal in nature. It's insane. And, like, keep in mind, this isn't the worst one. I wanted to cover one, like, that came out a couple weeks ago, and it might be one of the most iconic images on par with, like, the Abu Ghraib torture that the U.S. put out. I'm not phrasing it correctly. I'm sorry. I'm very upset. But it's on par with the Abu Ghraib torture photos. And it's just a picture of, like, a naked Palestinian man, like, tied up to a chair and, like, clearly being tortured. Like, it's insane. And yet the world has done precious little so far to stop it. Foremost among them, the United States. Greatest enabler of this this genocide. And to be clear, we also know, because we have American citizens in Gaza and who've worked in Gaza, even during this crisis. And I wanted to go over this. It came out a few days ago in the Los Angeles Times. It's an opinion piece titled, "I'm an American doctor who went to Gaza. What I saw wasn't war, it was annihilation." And I think we need to get, and I know when I say we, I know that people here understand. Right? I know that you guys who are watching me right now, I know that you understand that this is annihilation, but there is a huge mainstream component of American society that does not know that. That thinks it is, well, obviously they got to get the bad guys. Not understanding that, like, when the IDF goes in to get the bad guys, what they do is they just blow up the entire building. They blow up an entire building, hostages, prisoners of war, whoever. That's how they get the bad guys. And it's just horrifying.
Many thanks for doing what you do. Appreciate especially the politics and the horror stuff. Don't push yourself too hard.
I appreciate that very much, Lokamar. Thank you for the $20 dono. That is incredibly generous of you. So I wanted to go through this because I think that there is a contingent of, for lack of a better word, normies out there who still think that this is, small scale, who still think that this is, well, we gotta, you kill the bad guy and all the hostages. Obviously, that's how you solve a hostage situation. They don't think it through. They just think, oh, they're gonna, like, precision snipe the bad guy. And then, I mean, yes, there's also a significant portion of America, and this is for you normies out there too, because I know my audience knows this. But there are many evangelical Christians who believe that by moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, by helping Israel consolidate its sovereign control over the entire, former landmass of Israel, the Old Kingdom, that this will usher in the end of the world. They think that will begin the rapture, and that or will herald the second coming of Christ. And I know that these people exist because I literally grew up in a household that believed that. That believed that the failure of the Oslo Accords was actually a precursor to the end conflict, Armageddon, end of the world. And I need people to understand that there are millions of people who believe that in America. Because if you don't understand that, you don't understand why America's position is what it is on Israel. So, let's take a look here at I'm an American doctor who went to Gaza. What I saw wasn't war, it was annihilation. In late January, I left my home in Virginia, where I work as a plastic and reconstructive surgeon, and joined a group of physicians and nurses traveling to Egypt with the humanitarian aid group Med Global to volunteer in Gaza. I have worked in other war zones, but what I witnessed during the next 10 days in Gaza was not war. It was annihilation. At least 28,000 Palestinians have been killed in Israel's bombardment of Gaza. From Cairo, Egypt's capital, we drove 12 hours east to the Rafah border. We passed miles of parked humanitarian aid trucks because they weren't allowed into Gaza. Aside from my team and other envoy members from the United Nations and World Health Organizations, there were very few others there. Entering southern Gaza on January 29th, where many have fled from the north, felt like the first pages of a dystopian novel. Our ears were numb with the constant humming of what I were told were surveillance drones that circled constantly. Our noses were consumed with the stench of 1 million displaced humans living in close proximity without adequate sanitation. Our eyes got lost in the sea of tents. We stayed at a guest house in Rafah. Our first night was cold, and many of us couldn't sleep. We stood on the balcony listening to bombs and seeing the smoke rise from Khan Yunis. As we approached the European Gaza hospital the next day, there were rows of tents that lined and blocked the streets. Many Palestinians gravitated toward this and other hospitals, hoping it would represent a sanctuary from the violence. They were wrong. People also spilled into the hospital, living in hallways, stairwell corridors, even storage closets. The once wide walkways designed by the European Union to accommodate the busy traffic of medical staff, stretchers, and equipment were now reduced to single file passageways. On either side, blankets hung from the ceiling to cordon off small areas for entire families, offering a sliver of privacy. A hospital designed to accommodate about 300 patients was now struggling to care for more than 1,000 and hundreds more seeking refuge. I began work immediately, performing 10 to 12 surgeries a day, working 14 to 16 hours at a time. The operating room would often shake from the incessant bombings, sometimes as frequent as every 30 seconds. We operated in unsterile settings that would be unthinkable in the United States. We had limited access to critical medical equipment. We performed the amputations of arms and legs daily using a giggly saw. My God, a Civil War era tool. Essentially a segment of barbed wire. Fuck. Many amputations could have been avoided if we'd had access to standard medical equipment. It was a struggle trying to care for all the injured within the constructs of a healthcare system that has utterly collapsed. I'm sorry, it's just, a rotating piece of barbed wire as a saw through somebody's leg. Sometimes children's legs. Not infrequently. I listened to my patients as they whispered their stories to me as I wheeled them into the operating room for surgery. The majority had been sleeping in their homes when they were bombed. I couldn't help thinking that the lucky ones died instantaneously, either by the force of the explosion or being buried in the rubble. The survivors faced hours of surgery and multiple trips to the operating room, all while mourning the loss of their children and spouses. Their bodies were filled with shrapnel that had to be surgically pulled out of their flesh, one piece at a time. I stopped keeping track of how many new orphans I operated on. On one occasion, a handful of children, all about the ages of 5 to 8, were carried to the emergency room by their parents. All had single sniper shots to the head. Not that they got hit in a hail of bullets that just happened to hit a child. No, sniper rounds to the head. Well, that's what happens in war, though. you know, in the fog of war, you can't help but just plug a sniper round through a child's skull. I don't know. The people who make excuses for this, I don't know how. I don't know how you live with yourself. It's true. You know, they're the IDF. They're just so highly trained. They're just 360 no scoping it. You know, they can't actually see their target. They're just jumping around 360 no scope, baby. These families were returning to their homes in Khan Yunis, about 2.5 miles away from the hospital, after Israeli tanks had withdrawn, but the snipers apparently stayed behind. None of those children survived. Most moral army in the world, everybody. They literally the propaganda networks were buzzing with that phrase for like the first, I don't know, week or two of this war, and now they're putting sniper rounds in children's skulls. On my last day as I returned to the guest house where locals knew foreigners were staying, a young boy ran up and handed me a small gift. It was a rock from the beach with an Arabic inscription written with a marker. From Gaza with love, despite the pain. As I stood in the balcony looking out at Rafah for the last time, we could hear the drones, bombings, and bursts of machine gun fire. But something was different this time. The sounds were louder and the explosions were closer. This week, Israeli forces raided another large hospital in Gaza, and they're planning a ground offensive in Rafah. I feel incredibly guilty that I was able to leave while millions are forced to endure the nightmare in Gaza. And as an American, I think our tax dollars paying for the weapons that likely injured my patients there. I think of them. Already driven from their homes, these people have nowhere else to turn. Just heartbreaking stuff. But I think people need to know these stories because these stories are very carefully kept away from the mainstream American public. They're not flashy. They're not cool. They don't have a faith in Biden because they criticize Biden. They criticize his inaction, and Lord knows the worst thing you can do in mainstream media is criticize Biden. It's deeply disappointing, an indictment on the American people that over and over again our politicians fail us. Like, I mean, this is Kathy Hochul, the governor of New York, justifying the atrocities we just read about.
Call out Hamas for what it is, and it is a terrorist organization that must be stopped. No one, no country should
True. I agree with that, by the way.
live with that threat, that specter over them. And for those who don't understand this dynamic here in our own state, in our own country, I'll give you an example.
Please do.
I'm from Buffalo. Anybody realize that? If Canada someday ever attacked Buffalo, I'm sorry, my friends, there would be no Canada the next day, right? Right? I love Canada, but we did have the War of 1812, and they did burn Buffalo, so there might be a little conflict here. But think about that. That is a natural reaction. You have a right to defend yourself and to make sure it never happens again. And that is Israel's right. Call out Hamas for what...
So, yeah, I feel like I shouldn't have to point out that everything about that was weird and sociopathic. Like, haha, we would simply kill everyone in Canada. That would be a evil war crime, actually. Like, we didn't even kill all of, I don't know, the secessionists in the South. We didn't like kill them down to every man, woman, and child. We didn't kill every man, woman, and child in Nazi Germany. Like, the fact that her go-to example is the complete eradication of Canada kind of goes to show how, like, absolutely psychopathic that is, right? It's insane. And not only that, but then to then be like, ah, yes, and this is why Israel has the right to kill everyone in Gaza? What? Kill? I don't know. Someone needs to ask Kathy Hochul if she's serious about that. Like, are the 5-year-olds Hamas? Is there an age limit? Do you kill everyone over 30? Like Logan's Run? Like what is she proposing here? My God. Liberals, wake up. And then weirdly she's like, well, and then there was the War of 1812 where Canada did invade us, and then we didn't kill all Canadians, oddly enough. We also didn't kill all the British. It's almost like you don't just kill all the people from the faction you hate or are at war with, or you deal with the people who are causing the problem, not just kill everyone. Didn't we instigate the War of 1812? I mean, I don't remember the details of the War of 1812, but as a rule of thumb, I mean, I can see the United States being weird like that, yeah. Though it might have been one of the rare cases where the British actually, or another country started a war with the United States. I was about to say a rare case where the British started a war, but that's deeply incorrect. Yeah, here is one of the stories coming out of Al Nasser Hospital that I wanted to talk about. This is from The Intercept, just a few days ago. The IDF sent a handcuffed prisoner to evacuate the hospital, then killed him when he left. The young man, bound by zip-tie cuffs, delivered his Israeli captor's message, but was shot as he tried to walk out of the hospital gate. So, yeah, in a video taken shortly after his arrival, his eyes are wide, dazed, and scared all at once. He had something to tell the thousands sheltering in the facility. A crowd gathered round, according to Mohammed al-Halou, one of the only remaining Palestinian journalists in the hospital, and the young handcuffed man said that the Israeli military had sent him with a message, quote, "Get out of the hospital. You need to get out of the hospital because they're going to blow it up." Soon after following the same evacuation order he had transmitted, the man would be dead. Yeah. After Abu al-Ola passed along the evacuation order, his mother, who was also sheltering at the hospital, pleaded with him not to go back out. But her son said, "He said, I've been threatened. I have to leave the hospital or it's going to put all the civilians in danger," al-Halou recalled. He walked back out the door. In a video filmed by Mohammed Salama, the only other journalist in the hospital aside from al-Halou, Abu al-Ola can be seen walking away with a crowd of people around him before they trail away, and he walks in his own direction. Abu al-Ola was killed shortly after walking out of the hospital. According to El Helu, he was shot by an Israeli soldier 3 times in his chest and abdomen while he was still inside the gates of the hospital. Al-Ser, the hospital the Nasser hospital doctor, who has now been kidnapped, by the way, just keep that part in mind, confirmed the account of Abu al-Ola being killed as he left the hospital. El Helu later got footage of Abu al-Ola's corpse in a body bag, still robed in his PPE. In regards to the incident in question, it is being reviewed, an Israel Defense Forces spokesperson said in an email received after publication of this story. Yeah. So, yeah, this is heavy. It really is just war crime after war crime after war crime. And remember that story we just did about how there were 5-year-olds with sniper rounds in their skulls? Here is a man named Rami Igra, who was the head of the captive and missing division with Mossad, the infamous Israeli organization. Just listen to what he has to say here. I believe this is translated.
כן, כן.
מילה לטובת יוסוף חדד.
אתה יכול כמה מילים לטובתו אפילו.
I'm gonna turn this down, so I'll just read the caption.
כן.
A word in favor of Yosef Haddad, a word in his favor, and a word in your favor. Maybe a little different from what you said. There are no uninvolved civilians in Gaza. There are no such thing. Oh my god. Okay. There are no uninvolved civilians in Gaza. There's no such thing. Look, you're right. Gaza, everyone is involved. Everyone voted Hamas. Everyone over the age of 4 is a Hamas supporter. And our goal at the moment, and this is in continuation of what you said, is to turn them from Hamas supporters into Hamas dislikers, and the way is supplying the humanitarian aid through us. Okay, so look, regarding the uninvolved, every house in Gaza is a Hamas HQ, weapons, Al-Aqsa, everything, all the signs are there. And still, how do you say children from the ages of 0 to 4, they are uninvolved? Maybe when they grow up, they will be. In the meantime, you cannot starve them. They are children, there is nothing to do. I agree with you. This is also against our interests. Yes, exactly. But, this guy literally says in response, there are no uninvolved civilians in Gaza. He says there's no such thing. Yeah, he's saying civilians, they're valid targets. If they're 4 years old, they could be Hamas. They could be Hamas. But if they're if they're 5 years or older, they could be Hamas. But if they're under 4 or under, well, they can have some water and food. But if they get any older, they're a Hamas now.